There are 9 categories of art, and I will recreate them one by one in front of you. My name is the God of Fiction, who holds all the dreams in this universe. Now let's choose from the 9 major arts. Choose literature, you must not rush for updates. Choose music, you will be addicted to it. Choose painting, you will fall into madness. Choosing sculpture will make you look as handsome as sculpture. Choose a game. Oh my friend, do you need to recharge? Once you recharge, happy 7 days. Keywords of the novel. World of Evil Gods game without pop-ups. Download the complete set of World of Evil Gods game TXT, and read the latest chapters of World of Evil Gods game. Chapter 1. Shameful Person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Shameful Person. Xiang Lin's thinking gradually became clear, and everything in the past was as unreal as a dream. Firstly, I have organized my current thoughts. This is not the bed where one lies, but a quaint and dilapidated temple with several towering bookshelves that seem to be crumbling. Bottles, jars, and other things are scattered haphazardly around various locations. In one of the more piled-up areas, there is a huge altar in front of it that looks too grand and dignified. The entire temple is carved from a huge rock mass, with light gray and thin gauze-like textiles hanging everywhere, on which strange, twisted, and dim words are written. The pillars that were originally supposed to stand in the temple have all been broken, and not only that, there is also a large hole on the zenith, where intense light is shining in. The red halo reflects the outline of the sun, and a thin layer of shallow fog blocks the position of the hole. It is unknown how the journey was made, but before falling asleep, I heard a strange call. Looking back now, tracing back with the spiritual power of the gods, I realized that it was not a sound made by humans, but rather an electronic synthesized sound. Yes, the deity, whose name is the Nameless One, is the deity in charge of the power of confusion. Xiang Lin no longer has a face, and his entire body is like being covered with a large layer of white cloth, or rather a long robe, except that his hood also covers his face. On the other hand, the face lacks facial features but can see things and hear sounds, as if the facial features themselves are unnecessary decorations, and it doesn't matter if they are discarded. Around the white robe, there is a small and close-fitting black light surrounding it. Under this black light, it appears that the entire existence of Xianglin is like a silhouette. Speaking of identity. There is both bad news and good news here. The bad news is that I am no longer a human, but not a scumbag like Goblin or Slim, but a god, just an evil god. The good news is that there are still gods in this world, all of whom are evil gods, and I am just one of them. The reason why they are evil gods rather than righteous gods is because all evil gods acknowledge the existence of righteous gods, and even preserve many ancient altars of righteous gods. For the living beings of this era, most of the so-called righteous gods no longer exist, and even in historical legends, there are only fragments left. The righteous gods leave their altars in the world, which are like stars in the universe. The star on which they fall will make the star full of vitality. The evil gods collect the altars of ancient righteous gods and throw them towards the dead stars to give birth to life, in order to cultivate their own farms. What positive gods need is positive emotions to maintain their own activity. Evil gods maintain their liveliness through various negative emotions of sentient beings. The past was a time when the righteous gods were very active. But for the evil gods, they have never witnessed it. Because most of the history of the first few eras is unknown to people, only the stories of the late Quaternary and the fifth eras are known to the gods. And now it is the sixth period. Let me recall. Xiang Lin is currently determining the current situation. His original form, the true unattractive god, was persecuted by a certain deity due to hostility. The church was dissolved, believers were expelled, and faith was sealed. This is a common occurrence in the process of gods competing for faith and value. Without the support of believers, the gods will gradually be forgotten and frozen in time, becoming wax statues of time. I still have 2 weeks of survival time now, although I may not die suddenly, I cannot say I have enough. Shang Lin looked at the huge altar. The unattractive god decided to use this altar in order to avenge the evil god and make his faith great again. This is the secret trump card of the unattractive god. He has been studying this altar for a long time and has confirmed that it is a treasure left over from the end of the Second Age, which houses the heritage of an ancient deity. Shang Lin almost came to the altar in a floating state, with a crimson glow floating on the altar. It is obvious that the inheritance has been activated, and the crimson light burst out with a burst of information flow. Text belonging to the Second Age entered the divine consciousness of the Shanglin and transformed into text that the gods of the Sixth Age could recognize, as if it had adaptability. Enlightenment Terminal, activation rate of 5%. Unlock the permission to use Enlightenment runes. Learning Enlightenment runes helps you gain a clearer understanding of how the world operates. In theory, you will have the ability to build everything. The Enlightenment still has an unfinished work project. Shang Lin learned about this information, but did not immediately take over. But rather familiarizing oneself with these ancient runes. Information and information can be arranged and combined freely, even if it is unknown. For the sake of the return of everything. The inexplicable divine words left by ancient gods made a declaration in the minds of Shanglin, while at the same time, laws that crossed several macroscopic eras came into effect in Shanglin. This law adds a piece of information within one's own divine body. Shang Lin looked at the crimson light shining on his hands. This ancient rule was telling him that he could now use Enlightenment runes, and the permission to use the terminal had been changed to himself. At this time, he could create anything he wanted based on his understanding of runes. Just find the materials that match this kind of thing and you can write its information. Enlightenment rune, beginner level. In this first section of the information flow, Shanglin found a reverse message that was a divine power belonging to the formless god. Shanglin witnessed the disintegration and melting of the deity's own will, and it became the material for writing a certain piece of information. The divine will is decomposed into information, and a deity's self completely disappears. This will should be the most important thing of the deity itself, storing everything of the deity, but in this rune, the vast divine will is only contained within that 5%. The original, formless god no longer exists. Even Shanglin has found its own part in the information flow. It is obvious that the soul of this interloper was intercepted by the god of no appearance and used by him to activate the Enlightenment terminal. However, his operation encountered a problem, causing the Enlightenment terminal to recognize it as a high-level material and decompose it. Under the influence of the Enlightenment terminal, his information was input in reverse, occupying the empty shell of the god of no appearance. The bottles and jars next to the altar are not meant to hold any dust or liquid, but rather containers for storing value and information. These bottles and jars are all empty, because the god of no appearance has already given all his savings to this altar. And he has already studied things like information. Obviously, his research progress is not slow, and he almost has to touch the big secret treasure left by ancient true gods, but unfortunately lacks a little bit of luck. Looking at his own state, Shanglin found that the textiles on his body had become old and there were also some messy murmurs in his ears. This was because the power of time gradually covered him, which meant that if he didn't make any changes and searched for believers, he would be on the brink of death. I just became a deity and resurrected. I don't want to die so soon. This crimson power, called the Enlightenment terminal, will be the first step in changing one's own destiny of destruction. It is also the most important key force. A broken function filled with tens of thousands of eerie variables, filled with various twisted code residues that everyone and God are angry about. The ancient languages and meaningless strange names that have long been abandoned by the world can be seen everywhere in this code library, where the whispers of evil gods are concretized, endless bugs intertwined and relying on each other, establishing unbreakable bonds. Even if an unattractive programmer aspires to reshape this thing into something that can be understood by both gods and humans, the beginner of Enlightenment runes. From Beginner to Beginner. 1.0 Development Log. A new authority has been created. Now is the time to find new believers for testing. Due to the change of power, the remaining remnants of the original confusing power have been written into new skills that enhance the experience, which is also a specialized power of enchantment. And the Enlightenment rune also carries a power called Enlightenment Value, which seems to originate from this rune and the true owner of this terminal, the deceased ancient deity. In the current predicament, all I have to do is take over this value and integrate it into my new authority. The god of confusion has died, or perhaps due to the power of confusion, it may have been deceived by itself, because it never existed from beginning to end. The newly born deity is a fictional god, perhaps due to fictional authority, and the god of confusion is just a certain image created by the fictional god. This is a cleansing of the power of the old deity, and then the new deity issues their own declaration of occupation. Shang Lin saw this from the records of the unattractive deity, and he also made similar remarks about a deceased deity who was once in charge of the lost deity and was ultimately taken over by the confused deity, losing in the struggle. Subsequently, a sense arose in Shang Lin's heart, and the first voice of this new authority came out. Not existing doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because being known is also a form of existence. This is a declaration from God, which will not be known to the world and represents the nature of the fictional God itself. At the moment when the new authority was completed, Shang Lin heard the voice calling out to him. Following the sound, Shang Lin saw a city cluster scattered with factories and hospitals. In a corner of the city cluster, in a relatively prosperous tavern, a vampire lady was sitting in the corner of the tavern, writing and drawing on an account book. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Recharge Game Coins. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Recharge Game Coins. My beliefs have spread across several worlds, and I am the unattractive, the god of confusion, and the ruler of blurred black and white. He is a deity worshipped by countless stage performers, fraudsters in the sewer, secretive informants, eloquent lobbyists, and those who speak ill of journalists. But those are already in the past tense. So I will no longer engage in past deceptive activities. This time, I want to be a good god. Otherwise, if I keep doing these deceptive things, I will eventually be killed by other gods. Shanglin descended along the call, which did not originate from conventional prayer. It's not a loud cry from a believer requesting the arrival of a deity, but a cry from the root. Just like double messengers attract each other, a successful deity needs to know how to travel in both directions with believers or how to develop their own followers. Miss Vampire, named Malt, sat at the table, drinking expired blood packets mixed with alcohol. She looked at the lamps in the tavern, which were made of sparkling crystals and were a unique mineral of the world called Grey Land. More than 30% of the world's total profit in the Grey World came from the mining and synthesis of this mineral. The 15,781st day from the Blue World to the Grey World. Today's revenue is, today's expenditure is. The customers in the tavern were drinking while playing some kind of game, which was her invention of checkers and flying chess. The richness of entertainment methods is an important factor in attracting customers. Miss Vampire is an outsider who came from the Blue World to the Grey World. She found that people in this world lack the most common entertainment methods. Even though the gods hold a suppressive attitude towards entertainment activities, the most basic part of entertainment activities is still allowed to exist. Her family is called Norsa, one of the oldest and most prestigious vampire families in the world of Lake Blue. Throughout history, she has served an unknown deity, but in her generation, the deity, after observing her situation, believed that she did not have the value of being used. Because she is a special variant in the family group. Vampires exist in many worlds, and the self-names of vampires vary from world to world. There are blood races, blood worshippers, red elves, and blue nobles, and depending on their self-proclaimed identity, vampire populations in different worlds also have different physiological differences. For example, vampires in the blue world can reproduce like humans and appear under the sun without any impact. But reproduction is not the usual method of Acacia, but rather both parents guide their own blood to create a brand new bloodline offspring through a ritual similar to blood activation on the blood placenta of a third-party unknown blood, which naturally includes the bloodline factors of both parents. Malt, as a variant of the Azure nobles in the world of Lake Blue, is naturally immune to the power of blood, which means she cannot use blood magic and is not affected by any blood magic. Even any changes in the characteristics of foreign blood itself cannot affect her, and her blood is not affected by foreign blood. She also doesn't have any thirst for blood that vampires should have. Drinking expired blood packs now is purely for fun, so she adds alcohol and other things randomly inside. This gave Malt's parents the idea of, how did I have such a strange thing? They seriously suspected that the third-party unknown blood used in the activation ceremony at that time was expired, leading to this unpredictable mutation. This also makes the deity served by the Azure nobles, after each divine descent, show an expression of Subway Elder Phone. JPG, when they see the malt at the same time, and indicate that the birth of malt may be a transcendent evolution, but it may also be really related to expired blood packs. Malt also felt that staying in the family was not very interesting, so he ran out to realize his self-worth and slap his own deity in the face. All the gods are demanding value, and value is diverse. Since there is no self-worth identification among the blue vampire clan, let's venture into other worlds. Life is still very long, I don't exist for a vampire-worshipped deity, let alone this deity's second-hand blood bag. Miss Malt hummed a strange tune and looked at the noisy crowd in the tavern. Obviously, playing games and entertainment would greatly help the tavern's business, there is so much value in the world, why doesn't there be a god who makes games? Miss Malt began her fantasy time, thinking that if there were such a god, the world would definitely be much more interesting. Those ancient games have been circulating in various worlds for thousands of years, perhaps because most of the gods prohibited the development of entertainment, so there were no gods who made games. Once people became happy, how could the gods continue to cut leaks? Miss Malt was lost in thought and began to ponder again, what new games would be needed to boost the revenue of the tavern after playing checkers and flying chess. Created a game, someone with special value, I came upon your call, I have a new game you need. Do you want someone to try it out? It's now, fantasy time. Miss Malt heard the sound that came to her mind. She froze on the spot. Gray world. Most of the city-states in this world are filled with factories and thick smoke, the sky is gray-black, and the rain is mixed with ashes and haze. The world of the gods is the stars in the universe, and each world is shaped by the gods. The composition of these worlds, the patterns of society, and the values of the creatures living on them are all well prepared by the gods, constantly providing them with what they need for the chives and the gods. Morning Wind City Cluster. The factory with a black roof, towering chimneys emitting thick smoke, polluted winds accompanied by dim sunlight, awakens workers every day. Mice shuttle through the dim and damp alleys. Some pedestrians who have contracted pneumonia are wearing windbreakers and coughing softly as they walk on the street. In front of the customs store, there are dark elves with their bottoms fully open. The owner of the bookstore is a strange creature with octopus heads, and you can even see ghosts like towering thieves hidden in the shadows like a wall, ready to catch a passerby and cut their waist at any time. Physical pollution is increasing day by day, and mental pollution is also increasing day by day. The theme and tone of this city, as well as the general tone of the world, all have three key words. Developed basic industry, increasingly serious environmental pollution, and growing psychological and physical diseases. So, here, there are four main deities worshipped. As for the secondary deities, which are non-mainstream beliefs in a certain world, of course, in this world non-mainstream, it may be mainstream in other worlds. After all, the gods cannot invest the same amount in several worlds, because if they do so, the circles of faith will highly overlap, just like when there is only one wheat plant, but two people claim that it is their own wheat, so in the end, war cannot be avoided. Secondary deities, sacrificial beings. Shang Lin saw the deity who destroyed the Church of the Invisible, which was his church located in a certain region of the world with considerable scale. However, his faith in this world is still only a secondary belief because he emphasizes sacrificing value, which goes against the pain and impurity of these god capitalists who need to repeatedly cut the leak. Of course, his sacrifice was not sacrificing his life for a noble ideal. His sacrifice is the original meaning of sacrifice. The act of sacrificing another life to the gods is called sacrifice. During this process, one party sacrifices, gives up, abandons themselves, or harms the interests of the other party in order to achieve their own goals. The object of sacrifice is the sacrifice. But he still has great ambition, and among the third-level gods, he gives the most frequent lectures. Now is not the time to retaliate against him. The beliefs of the victims spread across more than a dozen worlds, and their followers have a huge influence and possess a considerable level of organizational mobilization. My thoughts return to my eyes. The strong atmosphere of decadence in this gray world made Shang Linton feel like he was returning home. The coordinates of the tavern are located in the third urban area of the Grey World Morning Wind City cluster, in the southeast region. Shanglin calibrated the coordinates of the tavern and placed his own divine token here. This is the first deployment experiment. People in this world have a passive call, because their bodies and minds are being squeezed and cannot be relaxed spiritually. After modifying one's own authority with enlightenment runes, the original divine tokens can no longer be used. And divine tokens serve as a bridge and medium for communication between gods and believers, and even for the convenience of believers, many divine tokens become items that need to be used in daily life or work. Make them widely used in production and daily life around the world. Although this wholesale-like token is very cheap, it also possesses divine power, and using divine power naturally incurs corresponding small costs, but the benefits are also immediate. If the power given cannot take immediate effect, then who would believe in evil gods? The sky has always been gray, and the light of the sun is difficult to penetrate this world. So, the night here appears even darker. Outside a certain tavern, at some point, a gray tin box appeared. It uses glass as its face, and a gear-like press is placed on a drawer-like part protruding in front of the iron sheet. It was there, appearing out of thin air, and people didn't feel anything unusual, but were immediately attracted to it. After all, in this world, there is a belief in gods and extraordinary power. The owners of factories, and many of their employees, are not simply humans, but rather pan-humans, which are other forms of life that possess certain human characteristics. With the start of the machine, the screen lit up and a cheerful melody of music suddenly sounded. That is a melody that people in this world have never heard before, and no one touched that tin box. The tin box was like actively inviting guests, playing those music, attracting tired people to gather in front of it. The passers-by in front of the tin box, accompanied by the sound of music, gradually felt their mouths dry and their blood boiling, while their ears were constantly filled with the bewitching words of the evil god. Charge game currency. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Lightning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Lightning. A human man wearing a linen windbreaker, numb to the extreme, knew he must have been bewitched by the gods, otherwise he wouldn't have sat in front of this tin box in a daze. When he sat down, he began to look back on his life. His life, it can be said that the first half of his life was very useless, but the middle part went exceptionally smoothly, even reaching the peak of his life at one point. He rose step by step in his work, and his salary also increased day by day. He always held the initiative in negotiations with clients, making great contributions to the company, until he climbed to the top 3 of the entire company, and even contributed to the development and growth of the entire company in the previous period. During this process, I met my beloved and immediately got married after a brief passionate love. My wife also fell in love with me at first sight, and she was very beautiful and moving. Then, soon, others began to lose out. Firstly, the company suddenly went bankrupt. He was also caught up in a huge debt by the company. He was diagnosed with pneumoconiosis at the medical association, and those with large arms and round waists were advised to open the stomach and take out the lungs for washing. Although the methods used by the medical association to treat people are varied, their diagnosis has always been accurate. His wife had an affair and fell in love with a true Tauran. And that Tauran even turned over and crushed his youngest son while doing big things with his wife. He would suddenly hit steel plates or billboards on his head while walking on the road, injuring his legs as a result. Even if he had no money on him, he would still encounter a Tauran thief robbing him, fortunately not cutting off his waist. And next, there will be even more powerful rewards to come. After his life was over, he decided, disheartened, to spend all the remaining money at the tavern and then jump into the stinky ditch to commit suicide. He knew why, because he had borrowed from Death himself. Although the loan requirements were not high, he did not expect the returns to be so intense. The god of death is one of the highest gods in the world, who governs the value of life and death. People who experience difficulties in life, even those who are extremely useless, pray to the god of death and he will definitely give you a response. When you receive that response, the value you create in your next life will be extremely huge. That is to say, from being a waste to becoming an elite in the world, and then when you think you have reached the peak, various abstract death curses will follow closely. If you want something, you will inevitably pay a corresponding price. A man once made a wish to the god of death to rid himself of a useless life, even if he could only live for half a year, and let him experience the world of successful people once. So, god of death agreed to him. Everything turned out like this. In the eyes of others, everything that happened to me is simply a legend. From being a waste to reaching the pinnacle of life, then the pinnacle will inevitably fall into a deep valley. All the beautiful things you have obtained will come to an abrupt end at this moment, and everything you have obtained through making a wish will inevitably come to an end. The added value of the living will disappear completely as death approaches, and the value of the gap between this peak and death is the reward demanded by the god of death. This is the price of borrowing from a god. But no matter what, as long as you meet the selection needs of the gods, they will always respond to their demands. This man already knows that he has come to the brink of death. Looking back on his life, a windbreaker man feels that he is also an abstract thing. So, no matter what the metal box in front of him is, he doesn't mind spending the few silver coins left in his hand. Perhaps in the last few hours of life, the metal box with unknown functions in front of me can still make me feel that the world is still somewhat new. Everything in the past was nothing but something lent to oneself by god of death. In fact, one does not have much ability. When everything is shattered, at this moment, one realizes that what they have obtained is just false. But at least living well once and reaching the peak, it's not a loss. Because this is what I have chosen. A man gives himself psychological comfort. If possible, he doesn't want to die, but a supreme deity demands a price from him that he cannot resist. He doesn't take the initiative to find himself now because he still possesses fresh death value. The man in the windbreaker followed the instructions on the box and threw in a silver coin. Following closely, dozens of shiny steel coins popped out from a narrow opening in the iron box. According to the instructions, the bearded windbreaker tourist threw this thing called game currency into another coin slot. Immediately after, a delightful and unheard of music suddenly sounded on the roadside outside the tavern, causing the drinkers wandering on the street or talking loudly inside the tavern gate, as well as the well-dressed migrant workers in another area, to come over in unison. What is that tin box? Does anyone want to use that tin box? Many people watched with the intention of onlookers. That tin box requires coins to be inserted before it can be used, as passers-by can see. The coin slot on the tin box reads, depending on the value of the coins inserted, this tin box will spit out corresponding game coins from another coin slot. For most people, they are not willing to invest a portion of their salary earned in a day into an unknown tin box. If it goes down the drain, it will be heartbreaking. But if someone else pays, let's talk about it separately. More and more people are gathered around. They gathered behind the man in the windbreaker, staring intently at the colorful images appearing on the tin box, accompanied by the pleasant music, creating a strange interface. The small plane is coming. A triangular iron bird. People in this world, including windbreakers and onlookers, have never seen anything like an airplane, so they don't know how to call it. In short, this iron bird appears red and blue, divided on both sides, with a column of text in the middle, which is naturally unique to this world. Its spelled name is Thunderbolt. Under the text of Thunderbolt, there are several options. The bearded tourist without hesitation pressed the option above and chose single-player mode. So the red little plane appeared in his sight, accompanied by the slightly uplifting melody of the music, and the first level began. The music is right, and there is also music. The man looked at the screen and thought to himself, is there such wonderful music in this world? Although it may not sound very pleasant, compared to the only 5 fixed melodies in this world, a new sound can always be refreshing and even slightly uplifting. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Pain, to Pain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Pain, to Pain. Games are something that, in order for people to continue playing, the first level is naturally very simple. Games that like to play some boss level units in beginner villages do not exist in this world. The man in the windbreaker controlled the small red plane. In his view, the enemy of the red bird he was operating on the screen was similar to it, but the color appeared gray. This red bird emits strange light, appearing vertical, like a stick. After flying out, it can knock out other gray birds and explode. The composition of that light appears to be an explosive. But the man in the windbreaker only thought about it for a moment, and soon forgot about the setting afterwards, because this is not important to him. The red small plane moved back and forth, left and right on the screen, and the gray bird in front was constantly shot down under his control. Those flying objects will still fight back, but the short-range light they emit cannot hit their own flying objects, so they are destroyed one after another. With the sound of clearance music, a smug expression appears on their face at some point. Of course, apart from flying objects in the sky, there are also some moving enemies on the ground, but these things are even more cumbersome. Although they will attack themselves in inexplicable positions and angles, how can these cumbersome attacks hit themselves? Slow, too slow. This thing is quite easy to operate. So a feeling of satisfaction and pride gradually rose in my heart. With the first level of clearance music, the windbreaker man even began to hum a small tune, and his mood began to improve. But the second level and the first level have become slightly different. The windbreaker man used to have a casual attitude, but now he has to start focusing on the operation. At the same time, with the completion of the second level and the opening of the third level, the number of levels continues to increase, and the difficulty also rises sharply. Finally, the music of failure rang out. At the same time, a small, even slightly blurry noise emerged from the machine, and the volume was very loud, even the onlookers behind could hear it. Game over. Accompanied by the music of failure and this mechanical declaration, there are the same few English letters. Although they are completely different from the words of this world, as long as you wear your eyes, you can see that what these letters are trying to tell you is definitely the meaning of failure. The bright red characters, resembling blood, fiercely presented a state of being slapped on the screen, with the greatest sound and extreme ridicule, and for the machine, it was just a notification. This was his first failure, and the man looked at the screen for a while until impatiently urging him to get off the machine rang out beside him, and then he regained his senses. At some point, a large crowd of people from all races had already gathered behind them. Their gaze was fixed on the failed screen, making merciless mockery of themselves and condescending, pointing at their recent actions. They said they were really good at playing. Although they are also seeing this type of thing for the first time, it does not prevent them from having close-range pointing and playing cloud games behind them. This made the man instantly furious. An extreme anger was about to erupt from his chest. The character game over is not notifying him of game failure, but informing him that his life is full of failures. Just now, all good moods have been shattered, making him understand clearly. Although in reality, you have failed, don't be afraid. You will still fail playing games. Kara. The game currency was stuffed in, and in the face of the urging to get off the machine, the man made bold statements. It's not until I run out of game coins that it's your turn. Who made you come late? After he finished speaking these words, he felt a foul breath and his mood instantly improved a lot. What's the use of pointing and pointing here? The machine is with me, but it's not for you to use. This level was not easy to pass. After dying 2 or 3 times and accompanied by constant booing from around, the man finally found a way to pass the level. A new clearance sound sounded, and new levels appeared. This is. The man widened his eyes. This time, the flying object he was manipulating had eaten something. The 2 attack lines he had originally launched suddenly turned into 6. Except for the 2 fixed lines in the middle, the remaining 4 were launched towards the left and right front respectively. Oh! Isn't this invincible? Someone exclaimed in surprise as they watched from behind, this flying object has been strengthened. Isn't it possible to clear the level directly afterwards? How many levels are there? I don't know, wait, look, what's that thing? Someone turned their gaze back to the screen at this moment and discovered a different novelty. Originally, although our controlled flying objects have the ability to shoot in all directions, the enemy's firepower has also changed. As the scene changes, it is clear to the game players that this is going through a plot, and the local firepower, those lights, and attack points are also beginning to move irregularly and dispersely on the screen aimlessly. Quickly, with the sudden appearance of a large number of flying objects and enemy turrets, those disorderly light spots covered the entire screen, and our controlled flying objects struggled to survive in the cracks of those light point attacks. But in the end, he was still hit. The strange music of flying objects exploding and failing to pass the level rang out once again, with a somewhat comical sound, as if mocking the player as a colorful pen. Game over. The man's eyes turned red. The harder it gets to the back, can the enemy still attack from this angle? This whole map is full of dots, how can we get by? The man scratched his head, and the crowd behind him began to cheer. I can't trade it for you. I can pass this level. Really? I can do it too, to be honest, I am a very skilled hunter. This attack trajectory and evasion method are easy for hunters like us. Here's a silver coin for you, get off the plane now. The man swallowed his saliva, but the desire for the game occupied his heart, and the strange melody seemed to mock him, so he remained silent and continued to reopen. However, this level is almost impossible to pass in the later stages, as the densely packed flying objects and the scattered attack lights on the screen make it impossible for oneself to cope. Until he finally passed this level after putting in a lot of effort and hardships, the melody of passing the level sounded, and suddenly an inexplicable emotional excitement rose in the man's heart. But although I have been abused all along, I have gained something unprecedented. Happy. It's happiness. Pain. It hurts too much. But while it hurts, it's also very happy. Perhaps this is just pleasure. I can't believe it, I've been tormented by this thing all along, but I'm still playing. It's been a whole 5 hours, and the old man in the windbreaker doesn't know how he got here. He has been playing this small airplane game called Thunderbolt for the past 5 hours. Charge game currency. Continue charging. Your money has not disappeared, it has just turned into happiness and continues to accompany you. Time's up, keep investing game coins. Hey, where's my money? The man in the windbreaker touched his pocket and found that his remaining coins were gone. As for the gold coins, the coin slot of this machine couldn't fit in. And in this moment, it also made the man slowly recover from the chaotic state above to a state of clarity. Almost done, it's time to get off the plane. How long have you been playing? Do you have any sense of time? Are you not working? Someone shouted at the side, urging the man to get off the plane quickly. In fact, they were already impatient, and their noise also made the guests in the tavern come out to take a look. What's going on? It doesn't seem like it's causing trouble. Miss Malt was among the onlookers, her mind still buzzing, and the echo of the deity had not yet dissipated. All the actions of the man in the windbreaker just now were under her gaze, and this new game or new game mode also made Miss Malt's eyes brighter and brighter. It's already early morning, security guard. Can you get him out of here? There was a black iron dwarf with eyes that stared like copper bells and a beard that fluttered like a fire. He was impatient and impatient, transforming into an impatient king and shouting loudly to the man in the windbreaker. Are you playing with dog poop? I made the mutated 8-winged chicken in the dungeon jump around on this tin box and play better than you. You've died many times. If not, don't play anymore. There were eager people around who had noticed that the man had lost the coins to continue playing, so they proudly took out various coins from their pockets or ears. Except for gold coins, all other coins could be put into the coin slot and exchanged for game coins. Wait a minute. I still have money. The last one. After touching himself for a while, the old man in the windbreaker finally pulled out another silver coin. But when he saw that group of people of all races, especially the dog-headed man with fangs and the black dwarf with tendrils all over his body, he quickly adjusted his mentality and said to the onlookers in a mournful tone. To be honest, everyone, my life ended yesterday and I am about to die. My wish before I die is to fight this last fight again. He uttered these words. Everyone was silent, and even the dog-headed person showed an expression of, "You're working too hard, you're almost done." However, only the black iron dwarf seemed to refuse this trick. He took the first 2 steps and spoke in elegant universal language. You fart. You were so excited just now, you didn't seem to be dying at all. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Your coin, my ass. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Your coin, my ass. Although the black iron dwarf expressed his doubts, the windbreaker man simply told others that he had taken out a death loan, instantly leaving a large space in front of the tavern. Although the status of the death loan can be clearly seen by almost everyone in the later stage, in order to make it more convenient for passers-by to leave this plague god and bring deeper despair to borrowers, due to everyone's fascination with the game just now, they did not notice a faint shadow covering the Windcoat brother. That is indeed a shadow of a dead loan status, and it is obvious that this loan has already begun its final settlement. If one rashly gets involved with such people, they may also be included in the final settlement process. The black iron dwarf immediately withdrew a message and expressed his unfamiliarity with the man, sincerely praying to the god of death, stating that he had not seen this shadow. The relationship has been severed, and I do not understand what this person was just saying. I also told Brother Windbreaker that since you are about to die, you have successfully obtained the right to use this machine for the next few hours. The man in the windbreaker was also satisfied with such a result, so he turned around and threw himself into the final fierce battle. And after just an hour, the man got off the plane. I don't have time anymore, and I keep my promise. Everyone knows that this guy doesn't have time, clearly he doesn't have money to buy game coins. There are still some regrets, but in life, there must be some regrets. A man tells everyone about the dangers of taking out a loan. It's better to rely on living than to die, but because he wants to live better, he chooses to take out a death loan. This is a typical case of being eager for quick success and changing one's life, and applying for this type of death loan. Although I reached the pinnacle of my life in a moment, what came in return was that my child was crushed to death, the company went bankrupt, I was seriously ill from debt, and my wife was even taken care of by a real bullhead. Is this worth it? For a moment, in front of the tavern, people of all races listened and burst into tears. Although everyone knows he deserves it, he is indeed a real disaster. Only the Bull Tauren crowd shouted loudly, indicating that there is also a pure love party among the Bull Tauren. Please do not escalate your behavior to the entire ethnic group, not to mention everyone. I went to commit suicide. Who can get through the 7th level? Remember to tell me at the public cemetery that I have already bought the location of the cemetery, which is in XXX. The man left, although he didn't want to commit suicide now and suddenly had hope for life, he still had to die due to the death loan. However, now he doesn't want to jump into the stinky ditch. Died with a joyful heart. It is said that those who made death loans, although seen as dead in the material world, their souls will not perish, but become servants of the god of death, just like managers, continuing to tempt other decadent people to handle the same death loans. The man in the windbreaker thought, if that's the case, then he still has a chance to return to this world. Be sure to clear the remaining levels when the time comes. That must also symbolize the reopening of one's own life. While he was thinking, he pulled out a flint pistol and pressed it against his head. A loud bang, the man in the windbreaker's tightly closed eyes opened. Hey! Not reopened, but unscathed, but the muzzle remained firmly against his own head. Even though there were bullets inside, the sound came out. So, where did the bullet that was fired go? A person, from the peak of their life, falls into the lowest valley in an instant, and the value difference generated during this period is the value of death. However, if they suddenly have hope for life, they no longer want to die, but have to be forced to die due to some external factor, then this value of death will be greatly discounted. It's like a delicious meal, suddenly turned into a pile of feces. I said he was going to die no matter what, but suddenly he became so happy. Preventing a low-value soul from contaminating the soul pool should be a good thing. So, the source of this joyful death comes from here. A handsome boy wearing a black windbreaker and a high hat appeared outside the tavern. He looked around 14 years old, with black eyes and golden curly hair. In terms of attire, the size of this black windbreaker was clearly a bit too large for this handsome boy, and the tall hat was the same, casting half of his face into the shadow. In front of the tavern, the noise has been restored. The young vampire lady quickly began charging and increasing the price based on the frequency of play. Although she was cursed by the onlookers, who said that her behavior was like sucking blood, she regarded it as praise. There is only one machine, and when the new one arrives, the price will return to normal. What, you said I am a purebred bloodline? Thank you. Miss Malt showed a bright and beautiful smile. But she didn't set the price too outrageously, it could even be said to be very cheap. Playing for 20 minutes or even less than a glass of beer. Charging on time and regularly is just a means, the important thing is to attract customers. Miss Malt is well versed in this, and the machine itself has almost no cost. She earns whatever she charges, and this behavior is exactly what the deity needs to do on her own. This is obviously a very interesting new project, as the favor of new deities means that for oneself who has already separated from the original ethnic group, there is also an opportunity to ascend to the level of apostles. Get off the plane quickly. So, in this situation of increasing fees on time and frequently, the onlookers harbored great malice towards those vegetable dog players who have been occupying arcade games for a long time. Especially the Black Iron Dwarf. Just now, how the Black Iron Dwarf cursed the Windbreaker man, and now the crowd is cursing him. Well done, don't hit again next time. The Black Iron Dwarf's black face turned red. Although he had just mocked the man in the Windbreaker, saying that he couldn't play himself. He played frantically for 20 minutes, finally reaching the 3rd level, and then the game time was up. Angry, he was squeezed out of the machine by the crowd before he could even add money. Wait a moment, I hope you can give me this opportunity. Just as the newly installed dog-headed man was preparing to deposit coins, a small hand pressed against the back of his hand. "Ah, little devil, do you want to grab my seat? I've been waiting for half a day." The dog-headed man grinned his teeth. The handsome boy wearing a black windbreaker was very polite, and in the angry gaze of the dog-headed man, he threw a gold coin. The anger of the dog-headed man dissipated in an instant. "Look, this is clearly your position, how could it be under my butt?" End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Will win O. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Will win O. Dog brother willingly gave up his seat, while the others outside were not convinced and began clamoring not to cut in line. The boy in the black windbreaker was not angry either, and threw a handful of gold coins out of his pocket. Scatter coins. The boy's ability to use money temporarily made the onlookers forget about the arcade, and even Miss Malt didn't know when she quietly joined the ranks of collecting gold coins. At this moment, Miss Vampire's faith in gold coins was more devout than any deity. And the boy in black sat down on his own, accompanied by the light and passionate fast-paced melody. The small plane named Thunderbolt once again changed its controller. When the boy hit "Game Over" for the first time, he couldn't help but put his hat a bit straight. This seems to be playing with something very new. The things inside are dead. Surprisingly, it also has value. Is fictional things also real? The dog-headed man next to him approached and said, "Will the second one lose?" "Boy. I will win. I am the god in charge of death, how could I lose to an iron box? It is the challenger." 5 minutes later, the word "Game Over" appeared again on the big screen. The handsome boy began to become addicted to it, even forgetting the time, until the surrounding onlookers gradually dispersed and he realized that dawn had risen. With the music of the last game ending, the handsome boy wearing a black windbreaker finally disappeared in front of the tin box, giving the machine to other players who had been waiting for a long time. Although the dawn of the gray world is still gray, as if the sun doesn't rise or not, it doesn't matter. But for the handsome boy, he has already obtained everything he wants. It's really fun. The god of death evaluates it this way. He also felt happiness, which was once rare to obtain value from others. The joy of seeing others struggling at the peak and trough of life, and constantly on the brink of suicide, although also good, lacked a sense of participation. As for the man who almost contaminated his death card pool, I have temporarily deprived him of the right to die. In the coming period, he will have an invincible time, and the other party's past debts will be cleared by the god of death. So the handsome boy brushed past the man in the windbreaker who was lost on the street. He stopped and whispered. When the debt of death is written off, it's like finding new value in return for you. The man is not yet clear about what happened. After the handsome boy disappeared, one of the gods who had faith in this world also benefited. The painful one. As God is named, the value he seeks is pain, and pain from any source is received in full. At this moment, the deity was in a state of madness in his own divine kingdom, shouting out to the pain-stricken. Suddenly, he received a lot of pain beliefs. He looked at his faith area in confusion, but did not find the source of this pain, which inevitably made him even more confused. You said, how could there be a belief that belongs to an unknown place? Is this a scam? Shang Lin, who was studying runes in the temple, had already burst out laughing. That laughter was like some kind of frog with incomplete 5 notes. Of course, everything was within my expectations. This method is indeed effective, and everyone who has invested game coins in their game console has become their shallow followers. There are actually many ways to recruit believers. In this era, the gods even hold offline lectures to recruit believers, but what they preach is still meaningless. Where can games attract people quickly? Moreover, with the support of various authorities, the current game console is truly something that can immerse people in it. A continuous stream of spiritual power surged towards him, and Shang Lin could feel that the power of time was further away from him. The power of time, which was almost touching him, began to disappear. At the same time, several shallow believers appeared in their own perception, their soul power dancing, very weak, highlighting their identity as low-level workers. Beliefs from Doghead people +9 +3 +11, Faith from Black Dwarves +7 +6 +11, Beliefs from Humanity +10 +4 +5, Faith from Trolls +2 +2 +1, Beliefs from Tauren +4 +4 +2, Faith from Steel Dolls +20, a series of beliefs are bouncing and jumping in front of one's own eyes, and these beliefs can also be subdivided into each person. Shanlin, when idle and idle, opens one by one to see. As the saying goes, when a game is released, developers must secretly check player reviews, in the process of any activity, through imagination and matching, create things that do not originally exist in real life but are reasonable and reasonable. In such activities, the initiator of the fictional activity, as well as the receiver who watches or obtains such fictional things, can generate fictional value in this process. So, playing games to increase faith is also something that aligns with the value of fiction, and fully brings fictional things into reality. And in the fictional world, I can also obtain various real values. The next step is to lower the price, extend the time, and then launch on a large scale, increasing the number of arcades in each public place. It seems that I need to work overtime. This is just a test, and based on current feedback, it is a very successful test. Dong 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 dong, when someone is looking for you, there will be a thumping sound of information. This is a new piece of information. Added a new faith. The belief from the God of Death +22, Black Faith, is of great value due to God's positive faith in you, the root of the essence of death. You have gained the divinity of rejecting curses. You can no longer be cursed by gods below God at the beginning. It was displayed as unknown, but immediately the true appearance of this unknown information was stripped away by enlightenment runes. God of Death shows concern and interest in your divine token. God of Death's expectations for you have increased. While playing your arcade, he provides you with faith from God and also takes away some of the death value from your arcade, which is generated by players manipulating game characters to constantly die in battle. There are 19 beings named God in the macroscopic universe, who are the highest level gods controlling countless subordinate evil gods and representing a certain operating law of this macroscopic universe. And the God of Death appeared, played his own game console, and produced positive output for himself, while in this process, he gained some divinity from the other party. Enlightenment runes, so powerful. Shang Lin was taken aback and soon had a bold idea in his heart, which was to sell the game to all the gods, but now, I can't do this kind of thing myself. So the focus immediately shifted downwards and returned to reality. What is the value of game characters manipulated by players constantly dying in battle? The second reaction of Shanlin is there a bug stuck here? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Fictional Church. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Fictional Church. A god-level deity, exploiting his own permission loopholes, took away the death value of game characters from the game. A huge materialized question mark appeared on Shanglin's head. Is the death value of this game character calculated based on the player's completion time, level, or number of kills? What an unexpected development perspective. If the characters in the game can also create death value for God of Death, then he wants to cut an extra batch of leaks from me. The more people play games, the more times the game characters die. Can this actually generate void value, non-physical death, and unrestricted reopening, which would not lead to value inflation? Is it because it also involves the conceptual root of death? At this moment, Shanlin initially felt the extraordinary power of the enlightenment runes, even causing Shanlin to fall into a long-term shock. A role that can generate value does not exist in the virtual world, and often only individuals with real information entities can exist. To be human, it is the life of the real world. To generate information and activity value, one must possess the behavior of life activities. However, if the world created by Enlightenment runes is not simply a hypocritical world of playable information, but rather the characters inside are, in a sense, real, then when the total amount of information is so large that it can expand to the entire universe, can countless real individuals be created? Shanlin is caught up in deeper contemplation. I am still in the early stage of developing and learning Enlightenment runes, and the next step is to deeply study the higher level writing methods of this rune. However, these things still need to be slowed down. The most important thing now is to carry out the arcade installation according to the original plan and open a new church. My own death is approaching, we need to rebuild the church as soon as possible. So Shanlin immediately issued an oracle to the vampire girl. Not long after, in the tavern, Miss Malt once again shouted loudly, making everyone's eyes aligned with her, and she wanted to announce something. To be honest, you may not believe it. In fact, that machine came from a deity. A few days ago, I received an oracle from a deity. Now I am a divine companion. She spoke to the guests at the tavern, her hands crossed to support her chin, her elbows pressed against the table, and her long lake blue hair cascading down like a waterfall. She informed everyone of the source of the machine. Since dawn that day, the arcade machine suddenly disappeared, and the player who was playing High Pie widened his eyes. My arcade machine is there. I'm such a big arcade machine. I'm super. The 20 game coins exchanged for 1 silver coin have not been used up yet, and the most crucial thing is that the next level is about to be completed. It's gone. Many people immediately realized that this was probably a token thrown by a certain deity on the road, but they had never seen such a strange token before. Those players who had tasted it, their faces turned pale instantly. Using the tokens of the gods means paying an equal price, which means creating value. But my group of people are just playing with that tin box and haven't created any value. If you insist, the game coins have been exchanged quite a bit, do these count as valuable? These people have been on high alert these days, afraid that an unknown deity may demand value from them, and then an unhappy deity may directly have their lifespan. However, such unfortunate things have not happened. Instead, I received good news. Malt, are you telling the truth? Is that thing called an arcade really intentionally placed here by a deity for our entertainment? The drinkers all felt unbelievable. Where in this world is there such a god who wholeheartedly serves everyone without seeking anything in return? All the gods are thinking about how to plunder various values from sentient beings. How could there be a god who specifically brings happiness to the world? The gods of this era seem unable to resonate with the value of happiness, so because of this, there are almost no gods born with completely positive emotions, only gods with negative and neutral emotions exist. If we explain it in terms of the 9 palaces of good and evil, then the 3 squares of orderly kindness, neutral kindness, and orderly neutrality are gone. Wrong, the fictional god is also seeking value. It's just your gaming behavior that you are creating value for him. He also obtains the value he wants from your emotions, and his way of absorbing value is different from other gods, so he doesn't need you to pay any additional cost. The vampire girl named Malt said this, once again confirming the demands of this new deity for everyone. There are only 3 requirements. Be good to yourself, forget about those bad things, and play more games. Be good to yourself, forget about those frustrations, and play more games. Be good to yourself, forget those annoying things, and play more games. He said he is a very direct deity and doesn't plan to give any boring lectures. It's just that if you find these games fun, he will hold a press conference before the new games are launched. I don't understand what a press conference is, anyway. That's what he said during the divine revelation, as a formal announcement of his entry into this world. Then, our tavern will officially become a church. The vampire girl announced another heavyweight news. That is her tavern, now officially designated as the place where this deity descended, and due to the appearance of a deity, this place has also become a church. However, Just as Miss Malt was boasting that she was about to become the first vampire cult leader, a group of believers wearing red monk robes arrived at the tavern entrance, who were sacrificing the church and distributing flyers everywhere. Due to the unreasonable demands of several deities, the shifts in the factory are naturally rotated. In addition, some races prefer the day, while others prefer the night. Although the sky in the gray world has been shrouded in thick haze, people's biological clocks are still operating tenaciously. So, the number of drinkers in the tavern has unconsciously increased. The sacrificial believers also seized this opportunity to come here and distribute flyers. Like many deities who lean towards death, the focus of propaganda is on the lower middle-class creatures, rather than the upper-class creatures. After all, those who live well will not make wishes without reason. Although they will also be deceived by other evil gods, their quantity naturally cannot compare to a large number of servants. Since ancient times, the mind has been filled with desires, but those who cannot, and are always trapped in life, constantly struggling between hope and despair, are always the people at the bottom. Sacrificial lectures. On this Sunday, the drinkers received the promotional flyers, while Miss Malt frowned and looked at the whispering drinkers around her. She ran to the largest table, shook her vampire cloak, and made exaggerated movements with her hands raised. "All eyes are on me," I announced something. "This Sunday, our church will launch a batch of arcade machines. At that time, we will draw 100 players and give away a bucket of the best beer we have taught for free. At the same time, I will pay for the cost of playing arcade games. I was chosen by the gods and became the leader of a church. It wasn't even a few minutes before your sacrificial church came to distribute leaflets, saying that your gods would hold an offline lecture on Sunday. He even went to my church to promote, it's really deceiving people." And the sacrificial believers who distributed flyers were all bewildered. "Ah, what church? Aren't you a tavern here?" End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Satellite Pot Lid. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Satellite Pot Lid. Miss Malt drove out all the sacrificial believers, but in this world, the sacrificial church is a secondary church, not a mainstream church, so Miss Malt is not afraid to offend them at all. The dominant church in this world is the steel church. In some worlds, sacrificing believers is extreme, and they may persecute other churches based on their own status. This is also a traditional practice that many churches engage in during their missionary process, known as heretical cleansing. But in a world where the status of the church is in a secondary state, this behavior pattern is completely impractical, so they can only take milder actions. Although the sacrificial believers couldn't figure it out, they couldn't help but burst into laughter as they listened to Miss Malt speaking from our church. Is this tavern also called a church? So our church is the kingdom of God. The sacrificial believers only thought that this vampire lady was going crazy. Although they were kicked out, they didn't take it too seriously. They just left while advertising. On the last day of this week of God, the victims will descend into the gray world in the form of projections. This is a precious lecture, an excellent opportunity to listen up close to a deity's teachings. If we don't buy tickets for the lecture now, on the last day of this God's week, we will have to work hard at the hands of the second-tier vendors, spend more money, and make remedies that are not worth the loss. The victim has been paying attention to this land. He noticed that it is full of decadence, high pressure, pollution, and disease, which have caused great damage to everyone's body and mind. His lecture this time is a lecture on these current drawbacks, which will surely be of great benefit after listening to it. They are posting promotional posters on the streets and alleys, and the gods on the posters attract the attention of passers-by with exaggerated movements, their body movements resembling some kind of success school master. The posters read 3 sentences to help you see through human nature, recognize people accurately, collect my lectures, and become my followers. The sacrificial believers even went to the factory responsible for printing news and spent a lot of money to purchase a one-day promotion package. As long as you are willing to spend money, all the promotional activities this Sunday are aimed at sacrificing church services. Other churches will also purchase similar packages, but the Sacrifice Church added money to create a customized version. The content of this customized version, with specific implementation plans, is said to have great mages from other worlds arriving here, using those special spells to help them promote. Malt, your promotion is clearly not as impressive as others. A drinker watched as the sacrificial believers were promoting and preaching everywhere, while in the tavern, as the newly appointed head of an unknown church, Miss Malt was clearly shy and couldn't afford so much money. To be honest, in other worlds, it is said that most vampires are wealthy, but Miss Malt is an exception among vampires. She has also expressed that if it weren't for a little dream in her heart, who would be willing to leave their hometown and work in other worlds? Is money great? Sorry, having money means you can do whatever you want. The drinkers burst into laughter, but they also expressed that they would not attend any lectures of the victims. Their beliefs are not mainstream in this world, but the propaganda gimmicks put forward by the other party are indeed sufficient. What is needed to improve the local environment, free people from decadence and high pressure, pollution and disease? This will undoubtedly attract a large part of the middle and lower class people. They may go and listen with the idea of, it's okay to listen, but the reason they are the middle and lower class people rather than the bottom class people is because the lowest class people cannot even afford the ticket money, and these people are not the target audience for sacrificing the church for this lecture. Miss Malt strongly criticized these gimmicks and mocked them in a sacrificial church tone, saying, I can give you any promise, provided that I don't have these things myself. If I do, then you can pretend that I haven't said it. The drinkers also continued to laugh. Of course, one of the main reasons is that they don't want to spend precious time and money listening to others talk big. Moreover, although the tavern church doesn't have much money, the activity intensity is not low either. More importantly, if you can draw 100 advanced gaming qualifications, then Miss Malt will be responsible for all the expenses this Sunday. Instead of giving money to listen to others brag, it's better to come here for free. I think I can help you, Miss Master. A voice came from the entrance of the tavern. While Miss Malt was having a headache, the man in the windbreaker who was about to commit suicide came back yesterday. The drinkers were very surprised because this old man said he was going to commit suicide. How could he still be alive? Emotions are deceiving everyone's feelings. The man in the windbreaker saw a group of drinkers who were restless and about to attack with his fists. He quickly began to explain, stating that it was not because he did not commit suicide, but because God had pardoned him. As for why, he himself doesn't know. In short, his past life has come to a complete end yesterday. Today, he found a job and decided to reform himself and become a new person. What did you do before? Miss Malt asked. I work in a promotional company, replied the windbreaker truthfully. He said that he used to have some connections, although he is now in a slump and those connections may not be useful, at least there are still opportunities to meet those people, and his eloquence is very good, so he can definitely help you get some sponsorship. Miss Malt asked, oh. If this thing is done, what are your requirements? Windbreaker brother. I hope to join your church and listen to God's revelation. He had already learned that the arcade was related to a new deity and had decided to become a new person. Of course, he knew that the arrival of a new deity in a world represented a new opportunity for the world itself. Even though he is also here to cut leaks, there is a huge difference in the level of care each deity has for this kind of leak among sentient beings. From the previous and recent events, it is evident that this new god is a neutral deity. He is not a law-abiding evil, let alone a chaotic evil. Neutral gods are precious to every world, and they will definitely be welcomed by all beings in this world. The old man in the windbreaker decided to block his second life on this new deity, so he immediately made an agreement with Miss Malt. He stood up and left, saying that time is money, and finding customers relies on taking the initiative. Every minute is precious. The drinkers whispered to each other, expressing great confusion over the windbreaker's ability to survive, secretly wondering if he had any dirty PY deal with the god of death. Is he reliable? I have never heard of anyone who can survive a death loan. Perhaps he is favored by God. He will become an apostle. Miss Malt didn't put all her hope on the windbreaker brother either. After thinking for a while, she left the hall and went to her own room to start writing a letter. The purpose of writing a letter is certainly to borrow money. Although her wealthy yet stingy cousin always responds to borrowing money with a certain attitude, Miss Malt believes that in order to achieve a goal, the first thing is to have a persistent spirit of perseverance. However, the focus on sacrificing the church is not only on Miss Malt, the drinkers, and Brother Windcoat. As a mortal enemy of the sacrificial, Shang Lin also discovered the issue of sacrificial churches distributing flyers everywhere. Offline lecture. There are many ways for the gods to attract believers, relying only on those with nostrils in their eyes to become bishops. Not to mention attracting believers, they may even roll up money and run away after the corruption within the church. So timed speeches and active appearances of deities, this model of attracting followers, is more favored by believers. And one speech can attract a huge number of believers and followers. Times have changed long ago. The kind of thing that forces you to believe in your own deity with an axe is gone forever. Although it still exists in some backward worlds, the sentient beings here clearly do not accept this set of beliefs. Now, once again, the time has come to compete with the victims. It is obvious that Miss Malt and the old man in the windbreaker who started working again may not have been able to compete for the entire church. As the gods of their faith, how can they fish here while their followers help them conquer the land? Shang Lin quickly rolled his face on the keyboard and typed out a program. This is a fictional dream generator. Then there is the user manual. Shang Lin began to stir up trouble and soon appeared in the divine realm like a satellite antenna with a large lid. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Awkwardness and Politeness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Awkwardness and Politeness. Do you want to install new facilities? A few old customers in the tavern were drinking beer while listening to the vampire lady boasting in front of them. A dog-headed man gritted his teeth as he looked at the item in Miss Malt's hand, his face full of suspicion. What do you mean is to put this thing in various parts of the city, and then those people can see the propaganda of the gods in their dreams at night? The revelation of God generally does not appear on a large scale in a region, and only devout believers can. Well, you are also the Pope who drinks every day, and you may not be devout to this new God. However, I still have to say that it is impossible for a group of people, even clergy from other denominations, to receive enlightenment in any way. The dog-headed man touched the thing in his hand that looked like a small broken pot, and even put it on his head. What are you saying? How can you question my money sincerity towards the Lord? Miss Malt harshly criticized the dog-headed man, who shrank his head and closed his mouth. I have also obtained approval for the event from the Steel Church, and the city governments in several urban areas have also stamped it. It's really troublesome. May the glory of the Lord walk on the land of the Kingdom of Steam, and comply with the laws and regulations of the district government. Miss Malt looked out the window and said, anyway, all you need to do now is wait for good news. If we were to promote it separately, the publicity efforts of the fictional church would certainly not be enough, but aren't there currently the most intense promotional activities underway these days? In the gray world, among all media companies, advertising companies, publicity companies, and printing companies, the company with the widest range of business, the most mature solutions, and the best processes is called, today, printing, a printing media company. For sacrificial churches, preaching in a world where their own church does not belong to mainstream beliefs. To achieve effective results in such preaching activities, it is necessary to be ruthless, make decisions, and spend a lot of money. And the one who helped sacrifice the church for propaganda is naturally the Today printing company. No one will struggle with money. As long as your money is in place, we will be half-brothers of different parents. Even if I am temporarily religious, then you should recharge. Your choice of our company is an extremely wise one. We have provided promotional services to multiple churches, and the quality and intensity of our promotion are unmatched by other companies. Believe me, at least half the world will see our promotional flyers within a week, and no other company has this strength. The general manager of the company, Bohr, and the archbishop of the church shook hands warmly, and both sides were very happy during this meeting. To be honest, our Lord has just achieved a significant victory, and his faith has greatly expanded due to this victory. It is the bishops of another world who have caused all of this. You are also aware that among the gods, our Lord's activities are very frequent. He actively participates in all worldly events and has made many indelible contributions to promoting world prosperity and development. For example, the source of his victory this time is the destruction of the faith of the god of confusion. The god of confusion, also known as the unattractive, protects those filthy and lowly fraudsters. This time, by destroying the church of the god of confusion, the world there has been revitalized. It is believed that soon, under the leadership of our Lord, that world will enter a new era. The smile on General Manager Bohr's face awkwardly changed. However, the god of confusion is also the god of protection for performers, confidentiality, and journalists. If we lose the god of confusion, who will keep the secrets of the world, who will protect those acting employees, and who can guarantee that the news broadcaster will not suddenly die the next day? Those people are not important. There are many deities with confidentiality capabilities, and the same goes for the deities who protect performers. As for journalists, no one cares about their words because everyone will forget everything the next day. The Archbishop of the Sacrificing Church responded with a smile. General Manager Bohr also smiled awkwardly and politely, yes, yes. Yes, but for other deities with confidentiality, entertainment, and broadcasting characteristics, the cost of believing in those few is very serious. In contrast, the cost of believing in the god of confusion is extremely small. It seems that the reason why the god of sacrifice was able to destroy the church of the god of confusion may also be due to the participation of those deities. However, it was unexpected that the main deity whose faith disappeared recently was actually the god of confusion. General Manager Bohr is very wealthy, and he is not from the bottom class. However, at this time, he cannot help but feel a bit sad for those who have lost their faith in the lower class workers. These believers of these devout workers want to find another god with a similar nature to pray for protection. Those new gods do not have such good gods as the god of confusion. The reason why the god of confusion charges a relatively small price is also because his divine nature is vague, and even the attitude of charging a price is almost enough. And the archbishop who sacrificed the church once again demanded. In other regions, bishops have achieved great things, but now, I mainly hold a lecture in this world. As his loyal servant, of course, I will do my best not to be compared to bishops in other regions. You can use the funds we teach you freely. If you are short of money, that's not a problem. We don't need money, but we just need to make the promotion lively and grand. We must use the maximum effort to promote. It's best to have a little more innovation. General Manager Bohr nodded with a smile, and in a pleasant negotiation with the sacrificing archbishop, he finalized the promotional plan for this event and then sent the other party away. Soon, the printing machines of the printing company started running today. The so-called printing media is the dissemination of various information to the public through printing methods. There are many types of media for its dissemination, such as books, publications, newspapers, pictures, etc. Among all mass media, printing is also the oldest form of communication. And the oldest means the most mature. All its processes are traceable, and its harvestable results can be predicted and estimated. Similarly, today's printing company is familiar with the workflow of helping sacrificial churches carry out one-day propaganda. For companies, sacrificing the church is not the first church to customize a one-day promotion. Steel Church, God of War Medical Training Association, and others have found their own companies to conduct one-day promotions, and their content is also different. It may not necessarily be a lecture of a certain deity, but can also be other activities. For example, the promotion of the War God Medical Training Association was that on that day, surgeries such as medical treatment, amputation, bloodletting, craniotomy, and thoracotomy were completely free, and the more sick the patient was, the greater the discount. It also put up a prominent slogan. Wherever there is a disease, cut it open, and even if there is no disease, take a look. Anyway, it's free, and this knife is considered a bonus. In the past, most of the publicity was done through conventional methods, such as books, publications, newspapers, and pictures. At most, there were joint church activities, such as which restaurant to eat at and receiving small gifts from certain churches. For example, the steel church would give you a low-power thermostat. Alternatively, some churches may actively engage in the distribution of magical experiences, which are one-time, but for many people, they are a rare opportunity to experience magic and even take the opportunity to achieve certain of their own goals. For the church, this one-time magic is used to recruit believers and is also a small gift. And this time, changes need to be made to the way the sacrificial church is promoted, because the money given by the other party is too much. Those who sacrifice the church are truly wealthy. It is said that their reputation in other worlds is not very good. In the world where they occupy the mainstream, other churches have to rely on their breath to survive. The essence of their church is very strong, which destined them to occupy the mainstream industries of those worlds. It seems that they have made up their mind to become the new mainstream here. This time's money throwing is just an appetizer for their subsequent money throwing activities. The general manager of today's printing company, Bohr, is very lively. For him, he does not care about sacrificing the church to try to expand his own influence, because this behavior is destined not to go too far. The god of confusion was destroyed because the other party was not fundamentally a powerful deity. The ruler of the gray world is the steel church. The iron church is the institution of the iron god in this world. Sacrifice. It is just a small third-level deity. So no matter how much the god of sacrifice tries, no matter how much money he spends, the social environment of the gray world will not change in any way. As long as the gears of steel and the surging steam, as well as the jumping surgical knife of the medical association, continue to favor this world, the society here will continue to operate like this, and the efforts of the victims will never be related. Therefore, General Manager Bohr bluntly agreed to sacrifice the church's money-throwing activities and promised to use this money to do their things well. It's simply a scapegoat. No, it's the esteemed first party. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. How did you have the intention to play? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. How did you have the intention to play? Of course, due to the unjust leader's demand for maximum publicity, General Manager Bohr also came up with the strongest plan to put the box at the bottom, which is the one-day promotion package. This set of promotional plans is very different from traditional promotional models. Firstly, there are not many outstanding painters in this world who will be invited from other worlds. Even in most worlds, art is regarded by the gods as a useless pastime, mainly because there is no corresponding deity for happiness in this era, and positive deities do not exist. This emotion is useless for known gods. A more tolerant deity is not very good at managing these things. But some extreme deities are different. They see these things as great enemies to prevent believers from getting addicted to various happy and foolish things that are not focused on their work. In a world dominated by these extreme deities, art and other things are strictly prohibited. That's playing with things and losing hope. Are you going to draw after the boiler burns out today? Your work value for today has not been settled yet. With so much surplus value, how come you have the intention to play? The gray world, although not yet at this level, is not the kind of leisure world where everyone is good and we are good. 30% of the world's total profits come from mining, and a single industry is enough to give birth to many ordinary people who are being squeezed. In this situation, the spiritual development is relatively poor and scarce. So in painting, we need to invite excellent painters from other worlds, at the elementary level, to paint. The object of this painting is naturally sacrificing the values promoted by the church, as well as the victim themselves. Hiring one or more outstanding painters is the first step. Then, in the second step, the printing media company will print these paintings in bulk, enlarge and shrink them. Perform a mobile exhibition by posting posters on the wall or on the body of a steam carriage. At the same time, on the headlines of newspapers, there will also be the largest space available for the sacrifice church, inviting professional boastful writers to write meaningless propaganda of tens of thousands of words. These newspapers will also be printed in large quantities and quickly sold out at low prices. Of course, many people at the bottom are illiterate, and they are also the easiest part of the church to develop into believers. Ignorance is blindly eating fish, but words cannot be understood, and pictures are always understandable. At this point, it is still within the scope of traditional propaganda. But the third step is different. The most expensive part of the so-called one-day promotion is to invite a great wizard or multiple high-level wizards from other worlds. The kind of magician you want to hire is not the kind of violent magician who only knows how to rub fireballs and bigger fireballs. His spells are mainly used in production and life, and are quite magical. He is a change-oriented mage, which is a different school of mages. For example, enchanting these printed materials, making them, whether they are pictures or text, come to life and make a sound while being held by people. This has become a printed material with its own commentary. Even posters on the walls and exhibition paintings on steam carriages are treated with the same enchantment techniques. It can even make the anime wife live directly and temporarily. In this way, bombarding ordinary people with a large amount of information will yield unexpectedly huge benefits. The amount of money required to hire such a great magician with a transformation system, as well as the high-level magician team he leads, is immeasurable. However, the preparation work for this project needs to be done many days in advance, so that a large number of believers will rush to the church to attend the lecture on Sunday. When the staff of the printing company started implementing the plan today, they also made a solemn promise to the sacrificial believers that when your gods come and start giving lectures, your church will definitely be full on that day. General Manager Bohr took out a piece of paper from the office drawer and prepared various corresponding magic materials according to the magic circuit on it. This is actually a mailing magic formation that can only transmit simple fixed information in small items. After all, the gray world is not the world of magic. To win the favor of magic, you must prepare various advanced and expensive casting materials. If it were a high-level mage, it would be easy to cast the spell, cross-world mail, without the need for such a pile of materials. Later, General Manager Bohr personally began using a mechanical typewriter next to him. It's just that he just started working here when the employees under his command suddenly found him. Is there another church that hopes we can promote and sponsor it? General Manager Bohr frowned, and after careful consideration, he realized that none of the major churches in the gray world had any promotional arrangements recently. He then asked, which church is it? Employee. It's a fictional church. What is a fictional church? General Manager Bohr's face was full of confusion. The employees told him that this was a church that had just appeared yesterday, and it seemed like a new deity who had just arrived here. They had found several spokespersons in this world to form a new church. Ah, it turns out that a new deity has taken care of this place. If it's normal, I would be happy to have pleasant negotiations with his spokesperson, but now I still have work to do. There's no other way, sacrificing too much money from the church. The other party said they knew you. We only talked about a business deal last month. The employee's expression was a bit strange, and General Manager Bohr's expression was also equally strange. When he heard the other party's name, his whole face trembled and his hand almost hit the typewriter. Didn't that guy borrow a death loan? He didn't die. This is a surprising thing. How could the god of death spare those who borrow death loans? This kind of thing confuses General Manager Bohr, but there is no need to think about things that he cannot understand. Moreover, the other party now claims to represent the god of fiction. Has he been blessed by a new deity? This guy is really lucky. How come I don't have this kind of luck? Poor thing, I have come this far thanks to my own efforts and the company I inherited from my family. General Manager Bohr's tone was slightly sour. After all, after borrowing a death loan and enjoying it, he didn't reopen it, but instead became a dependent of another deity. This kind of thing is really enviable. After all, divine beings are not ordinary believers. Okay, I'll go see him. Please have some coffee and wait for a while. General Manager Bohr decided to meet this young man, and of course, he didn't forget to ask the employees to bring back a sentence. First, let him know some premises. Although I would be happy to meet with him, regarding the promotion, sacrificing the church has given me a lot of money. They will carry out a one-day promotion and a one-week extensive promotion. He should know that during a day of big publicity, all the promotional content on that day will be about sacrificing the church, and the same goes for large-scale publicity. Within a week, sacrificing the church's related content will occupy the front page headlines of major publications. So, if he wants to obtain certain promotional resources for the fictional church, there are still some spare areas on the printed materials. If he can accept them, these spare areas will be his. As for the promotional expenses, since it's a new deity visiting, I'll offer a 20% discount to show my sincerity. After President Bohr finished speaking, he quickly began typing characters on the typewriter. This message will soon be revealed by him, and then transmitted to another world through those magical materials, which is a world inhabited by many magicians called Meteor. End of this chapter.